So I've got some buyers right now, Mark, that are on the fence. They're not wanting to pull the trigger on buying a home until interest rates come down. And it's largely because of affordability. They see the monthly estimate and they don't like it. So as a lender, what are you seeing in those monthly estimates that are causing these high prices?
We've mentioned before that as rates come down, $300,000 loan, a 1/4% drop in rate gives you how much savings?
Ooh,
This
remind
is
me.
a
Yeah.
test,
Yeah.
$48.
Test on the spot. Yeah, I was going to say $50. I would have been
Yeah,
close. Yeah.
you're pretty close. So it's about $50. And I mean, that's real money. I mean, that's 2 trips to Chick-fil-A, right? So, I mean, it's real money for Americans, obviously. But what a lot of people don't realize is that there are four parts of a mortgage payment. The first part is what we're talking about, principal and interest. $300,000 loan, 6% rate, over 30 years, and you've got a payment, right?
Exactly.
And so, which is about $1,800 or so, for off the top of my head. But there's also taxes and insurance and mortgage insurance. And so the way that works is your insurance. Let's say it's $1,200 a year. Now, first of all, you live nowhere near where we are right now because your insurance would not be
You're
$1,200 a
not
year.
in coastal
Yeah,
Texas.
it would be much more. But point is, let's say for easy math, it is $1,200 a year. They're going to add $100 every month to your payment, to that principal and interest payment, to cover your insurance. So after 12 months, they'll have the money in your escrow account to pay next year's insurance.
Right.
And then the taxes, let's say that's $3,600 a year. Possibly a chance that happen around here,
Yeah.
right? So 3,600, so that's $300 a month. And again, $300 a month for 12 months, 3,600 bucks. They got enough to pay next year's tax bill. And then mortgage insurance, we've talked a little about, we can kind of go into more detail later, but mortgage insurance, it is what it is. It's going to be there if you don't put 20% down on the conventional loan. It's going to be there always if you get an FHA loan.
Yeah.
And it kind of is what it is. Now, when you break it down here, for example, we're in Southeast Texas, Houston, near the coast, and so insurance is quite a topic.
Yeah.
Do you know what the average is for insurance around here?
I want to say it's, especially in Galveston County where we are, it's close to 4 or 5,000 a month, or sorry, a year, isn't it?
Well, it depends on the
This is
price
the
of the
price of
house
the
for
house,
sure.
yeah.
1.35%. Not that I'm a numbers nerd, not that I spent any time figuring that out, but 5 years ago that might have been 0.85.
Right.
It might have been 1%, and it varies depending on the neighborhood, and it can be anywhere from 1%, all the way to 3%. You find yourself
Sure.
a place on the island that's in a flood zone that's on the beach, probably going to be closer to 3% of your purchase price.
And that's
Not
per year.
Yeah, per year. Exactly. And divide that by 12, that goes into your monthly payment, right? So, if it's $9,000 a year, that's a whole lot more than if it's $3,000 a year. It's just
Right.
simple math, right?
And I think what's really interesting is when you talk to people and you're educating them on the home buying process, they think I'm getting a fixed rate mortgage. That means my payment is never going to change.
Right.
And while that is half true, your principal and interest payment that collectively, the amortization, I believe you all call it in the mortgage world, that doesn't change. Just the amount that's allocated to the principal and the amount that's allocated to the interest changes and shifts more heavily towards the
Right.
principal through the life of the loan. But the insurance and the taxes do change on a yearly basis sometimes. For example, if a hurricane comes through here and there's a lot of claims, maybe they reassess and the insurance goes up. A lot of times the tax value of a home will go up, and we can get into the whole protesting taxes and all. That's probably a topic for a different video, but how do you protest your taxes to get that down? But all of those things factor in, and it can change your monthly payment. And to what you said, yes, interest rates being 7 are not ideal, even 6.5. I'd like to see something, we say it all the time on the show, with a 5 in front of it, even if it's a high 5.
Yeah.
I think that would really move the needle.
I
But
mean, we closed one yesterday, just saying.
we did, yeah, 5.75. The escrow officer said she hasn't seen an interest rate that good in years. So great
Hey,
job.
well, thank you. Thank you. But, and more to your point. So if insurance is $1,200 a year, that's $100 a month. If it's $1,800 a year, that's $150 a
Yeah.
month. And where people see large jumps in their payments is if their mortgage company doesn't catch up with that right away.
Right.
If they don't catch up with that right away and don't make that change, it's only $50 more a month, right? But let's say they catch it halfway through the year. Now they got to catch up. So your payment goes up $100 because they only have 6 months left to collect it instead of 12.
Yeah.
So it's difference, right? That they need to collect of $600. Well, if you divide it by 12, that's just $50. But if you divide it by 6, that's $100 a month. And
Yeah.
that's often what happens in those situations. So you just got to watch your taxes and insurance. Taxes, just around here, 1.5% or so, all the way up to 4%. Depends on where you want to live. And so, we have some additional taxes here because of the way the subdivisions are created and built, and then, mortgage insurance, I mean, that's calculated on, depending on what type of loan it is. I mean, FHA, it's set. Everybody gets the same rate, whether you got a 500 score or an 800 score. But conventional, that's different. It's based on your credit score, your debt to income ratio, your shoe size, your hair color, all kinds of things.
Yeah, and I mean that's the one thing that that tends to be a problem for my buyers right now is there, especially because we sell a lot in coastal Texas, is they're getting these insurance quotes and it's causing these deals to bust out, and they're not expecting a tax rate to be, because Texas we don't pay state income tax here, which is wonderful.
Right.
But they do make it up. The government giveth and they taketh away. We don't pay state income tax, but they hit you on your property tax. It's much higher than a lot of other states. And so I'll have a client say to me, for example, I don't want to live in Dickinson, Texas, because I heard the taxes are high over there, and it's like, well, not exactly, because just to use the city that we live in, for example, League City, we live in an older neighborhood established in the late '80s. Our tax rate, I think, is somewhere around 1.8 per year. You drive just down the road here to one of the newer developments like Akima Crossing or a Marbella or Coastal Point, and you're talking about tax rates at 3.6, 3.4, and that's largely because of the municipal utility district additional tax that's put onto the house. So yes, you're talking about the exact same city, for all intents and purposes, the exact same part of the city. We're talking a mile or less away from where we are sitting right now. People are paying double the tax. So when you look at the property tax, I should say. So when you're looking at what you want to do to set yourself up to buy a home and be in a good position, you want to factor all those things in.
Yeah.
Do I need to be right on the water in Galveston County and pay this much in taxes or pay this much in insurance? Do I need to be in that brand new build because I'm getting great incentives there, but I'm going to pay through the nose in property taxes? Or is there something that's a happy medium and that you run the numbers and you realize, okay, this is where I need to focus my direction as opposed to where I thought I needed to go? So there's a lot that makes it up, and it's not just principal and interest.
Well, and if you kind of bring the whole thing together and put skin and bones on it, your taxes, your insurance, your mortgage insurance, I mean, that can make up 35% of your payment right there.
Easily.
On a $300,000 deal, I mean, it's payments $2,700, $2,800. Okay, let's go down half a point. So if it was $2,800, now it's $2,700.
Yeah.
It's not $2,200.
Right.
And that's what I think a lot of people, get the idea. Well, gosh, if it comes down a whole point, okay, it's coming down $200. That is real money. Don't make a mistake. But what also happens as the rates come down is the market does pick up. And so you have a very good chance that house is going to cost more in the first place, if you're waiting too long for those rates to come down.
Yeah.
Now, if you're gonna wait, it's always a good time to buy a house, right? Best time was 20 years ago, second best time's right now. But if you're gonna wait, let's use that time to do some research. Like, let's figure out kind of where do you want to be in town? Where do you want to live? What do the taxes look like? What do the insurance look like? And that way you're prepared. If there's some credit score issues, I just had an agent today. Hey, I've got a lady, she's not going to buy for 6 months. Do you still want to talk to her? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, I can't talk to her soon enough because I want to look at her situation now and whatever we can do to prepare her 6 months down the road.
Yeah,
absolutely we want to do, because then she's going to be that much happier with her purchase.
exactly right.
Now, of course, sometimes we qualify the person. They're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I could buy now, and they buy a house tomorrow.
Right.
That happens. We're not pushing either way, but that happens
Yeah.
too. And then either way, they're prepared.
And that puts you, and I say this all the time, it's recycled on this channel, but it's the power position. You know exactly where you stand, you know what it's going to look like, and you know where you need to start catering
Yeah.
your search. And when you know those things, then you're in a better position to buy when the time is right. Even if it's 6 months from now, even if it's a year from now, you can make better informed decisions with the more information that you know, which is why we always recommend that even if somebody's not looking to buy immediately, at least speak to somebody like yourself, a lender, and let them sort of walk you through what living in Galveston County, Texas, what living in Denver, Colorado, what living in, somewhere in central Kansas looks like per month with your principal, with your interest, with your taxes, with your insurance, and paint the full picture, because there's so much more to the picture than this is what today's mortgage rates are. And we see with Jerome Powell and Trump and the power struggle that they're having, and a lot of discussion about the Fed and lowering interest rates. That's a very important part, don't get me wrong, but it's only one small part of what makes up the entire pie of a mortgage payment. And so I think if you're only looking at that, you're short-sighting yourself.
One more analogy, just because I know this will relate to everybody who's watching
Yeah.
on some level. Now, and I have a lot of friends who own car dealerships, and they're probably not going to like this, but too bad. So, I wonder how many people out there do you think, they walk into the car dealership and they go, oh, I want that. And then they find out, that it might be, I don't know, maybe that's going to be $800 a month to buy that car. But then if you stretch that payment out, okay, now it's 750 or 725, but then you add the extended warranty, maybe you walked in intending to spend $600 a month.
Right.
Before you know it, you're at $900 a month. If you had been prepared and done your research before you walked into that dealership, which again, that's where the car dealers hate that.
Yeah.
But you've done the research ahead of time, you would know what to expect, what to shoot, what to ask, so that you're not under pressure to make those decisions. Because that's the worst thing we see is people who are under pressure, like, oh, I've got, they waited too long, the process or whatever, and they have, I don't know, 15 days now to close.
Yeah.
They're under pressure to decide on their insurance. They're under pressure to decide, when do they want to go with, rates, closing costs, all of that.
Yeah, it's a great analogy.
Where if they take the time ahead of time, when we buy a car, well, first of all, we're putting half down at least. But, if we're buying a car, we're going to go to the credit union and we're going to get approved.
Yeah.
And we're going to walk into the dealership and go, I've got a loan right here. Here's the terms. If you can do better, great. If you can't, I'm
That's
using
who we're
them.
going with. Yeah, sure.
And that just takes the whole thing out of the equation.